Okay, my name is Nick Oakley, also known as Chimp, born September 1966. I'm here today to talk about Terry Wright, also known as Tell, born 6th of September 1965 and died tragically on the 8th of January 1989, aged 23. I'm going to go through this interview calling Terry Tell and Terry, just how it comes out bit by bit. So, Terry was a year above me at school and we both went to the same schools throughout. The schools were Wellsmead Infants, Wellsmead Middle and then Denby Comprehensive. Terry was actually born at home in Essex Close and had an older brother Tim, older sister Denise and younger sister Sue. Parents Pam and George, and I believe Pam is still alive. So my first memories of Tell are in the playground at Wellsmead Middle School. We used to hang out and play football together in the playground. I wanted to be a good footballer and Tell was naturally a good footballer. He played the game all his life, right from a kid, and was always first choice in any team and ended up playing at county level. The common denominator with me and Tell and our friendship was always football. You know, we used to have massive games of football in the playground at school and the five-a-side thing as well. I played five-a-side down Bletchley Leisure Centre, Tell played, and my big brother Simon played as well. So a lot of the time, I remember one time we got a lift back from Bletchley Leisure Centre, all in the back of a P100 pickup truck, about 10 of us. Things like that weren't totally politically correct anyway. And I will add that Tell was also a very good gymnast. And I will explain later some of the stuff that he did. So in the 78-79 year term, Terry left Wellsmead and started Denby. It would have been September 78 when he actually started Denby School. And his sister Denise was already at Denby and she was probably 2 years above him. And I think Tim, who was a bit older, was maybe in his last year at Denby or he'd already left. So I didn't really know Tim that well. So where Tell lived in Essex Close, across the road was Nick Brinson. Nick Brinson was in Tell's year at school. And Tell and Nick were in the same year, and my best mate was E.B. at Wellsmead, and they lived together in the house. So basically, Nick was Tell's best mate, and Ian was my best mate. In the school holidays of 1980 is a time when we all got into punk. Nick and Ian's parents were both at work all day, so we used to go in the house and play punk records. It was Tell, me, Ian, later known as E.B., Nick Brinson, Paul Pritchard, Rob Taylor and Martin Lane. That was our little circle of friends in and around Essex Close where Tell lived. The records that we listened to was Honeybane, Girl on the Run. Remember the picture cover with Pay No More Than 45p on. We had Crass, Feeding of the 5000 and Stations of the Crass, I think. We had Public Image Limited, first single. And amazingly, we had Public Image Metal Box album. And I think we had Pistols, Nevermind as well. So that is the first time I ever remember us lot getting together and pogo into music was in E.B. and Nick's house in 1980, and that was the school holiday year. So all the kids that were there in my year were 13 years old, and all the kids that were in Tell's year were 14 years old at the time. And it was a completely surreal experience listening to like all these weird Crass records. It's like Metal Box, we'd put Careering on, and one day we'd put it on 33 RPM, and the next day we'd put it on 45, because we weren't totally sure, you know, we were too young to understand what Public Image Metal Box was about, really, and Crass and things like that. So it's something I will never forget. So during that period of school holiday, we used to do a Ouija board. They had a big dining table in the house, and we used to close all the curtains off, and we made like a makeshift Ouija board. And you had a wooden spoon in the middle of the table, and we used to spin it round to see who was cursed and all this. And one day we was doing it, it was all dark, the curtains were shut and everything, and we had this surreal experience once where a cold wind blew through the kitchen and the curtain started moving, and outside there was a metal dustbin, and the metal dustbin started, like the lid was banging on them, and we all got up off the kitchen table, which was the dining table, which is in the front room, ran into the kitchen, and we just, like that summer, we just had endless, innocent, childish fun, you know, and that was us getting into punk. That is really how it happened in that house in Essex Close with our little circle of friends who all lived nearby. So into that year and moving into 81, we formed a punk band called Decline. Martin Lane, who lived just behind Tell in Essex Close, had a bit of a drum kit because his brother was a bit musical. I somehow got a mini bass guitar. I don't know how I got it. And Tell wrote the lyrics. And we went to the council garages behind where Tell lived, and we started jamming in there. And I think there was electric in there. And we eventually went to Sutherland Grove, where Geordie lived, because Geordie moved to Bletchley from Sunderland in 1979. So that's where we started. Geordie had an amp, I think. So me, EB, Tell, Martin Lane and Geordie, we sort of had this band called Decline. And at that time, we started going down to Pear Tree a bit, and we knew Dick Hemmings. And Dick Hemmings said to us, you can come and practice down there. And Tell wrote this song called Gone to Pot. The lyrics were, Maggie Thatcher's gone to pot, we voted her in and we all want a shot. And somehow, down in this council garage, we managed to stick 3 or 4 records together, tracks together, somehow. So when we started practicing at Pear Tree Bridge, Dick said, why don't you play on the stage? And we'd done like a little mini gig. There was like 10 or 15 people in Pear Tree. And obviously we did Gone to Pot, which Tell writ, and I can remember, I think we might have just done the same record for a track 3 or 4 times, because we didn't really have that much, but that was a memorable day. So getting into 1981, Tell and EB started wearing tartan bondage trousers. Tell had a black shirt with a fight back discharge patch sewn on the back, I think, and he started putting studs in the collar of it. And sometime around there, EB got a Mohican. And quite a few other kids in Tell's year, and Paul Pritchard in my year got a Mohican. And there was Stuart Wales got a double Mohican. And there was a load of trouble when they went back to school. Like, Walesy got suspended. I think EB got suspended. Paul Pritchard got suspended. And I don't know if you remember, the local newspapers came. I think it got in the Citizen, or whatever it was, Bletchley Gazette, and I think the Sun newspaper got hold of Stuart Wales' double Mohican, and I think that was maybe on page 5 of the Sun or something. But around that time, Tell never had a Mohican. He started putting soap in his hair, but he never had a Mohican. So around that time, we started going to Northampton, and one day a load of us went to Acme, which was the punk shop. And I'm not too sure if that's where Tell and EB got their tartan bondage trousers. They never had straps or nothing on them. They were just like the red tartan bondage trousers with the black zips in. And Tell's look was, he had a pair of 8-hole Dr. Martin boots. He had his bondage trousers like turned up to the top of his boots, and his black shirt with discharge on, and that was his look at around 1981. Around 1981, we was all going to Derwent Drive Youth Club all the time. And in that year, Screaming the Fits played there, Ethnic Minority played there twice, and Fictitious played there. And that was our first time we'd seen like proper punk bands come into our youth club, and it blew our minds. We loved it. And all the West Bletchley lot, some of them gigs, there could have been 60, 80 of us there. And everyone used to get hold of each other, and we used to like dance in this swarm. We used to have this swarm dance that we did, and everyone used to fall down and get back up. But we just loved the band, Screaming the Fits, Ethnic Minority, Fictitious. And a lot of people, including Tell, I reckon, learned to play the guitar with the ethnic minority records, especially Victim of the Bomb, because there was 2 guitarists in it, and you didn't have to play chords. Apparently you just tuned your guitar to E and you played the whole 6 strings with 1 finger and went up and down, and that's how Tell learned to play his guitar. Because a lot of time he'd play it like N.A. Palmer out of Crass. He took his hand the other way round and he used to play it like the guy out of Crass. So that was a big thing, Derwent and them bands. It was just massive, you know. It really influenced us and got us into being in bands and stuff. So in September 81, it was Paul Davis from Derwent Youth Club. He organised a coach trip to the King's Head in Fulham for an ethnic minority and fictitious gig. So it was a coach load of kids, basically all from Derwent Drive Youth Club, went down to the gig at the King's Head, Fulham. It was September 1981, I remember. I've looked it up. And we all started doing this swarm dance that we do, all getting hold of each other and falling over and getting up and that. And the landlord of the pub, he says, I'm going to stop this gig because you lot are fighting each other. And we're like, no, we're not fighting. It's just how we dance. We all fall over and we all just get up. And so in the end, he accepted it and the gig went on and we loved it. So if you look on Bletchley Punk Days, you can see Tell with his hand round EB. EB's got his Mohican and they've both, you can just about see their red tartan bondage trousers. And you can see the back of Tell's black drill shirt with the Discharge Fight Back patch on. So that was another memorable day getting into punk. And full credit to Paul Davis for organising that trip. And I'll say on that coach, we met ethnic minority and that we actually got to know them on a personal terms. Because like Jevons was on the coach. I don't know if you was on it, Alison. Yeah, and... So, you know, it was massive. And everyone was there. I mean, Gaz Ensign, Pete Miller, just Denise was there, Tell's sister. And if you look at the pictures on Bletchley Punk Days, I'll put a full list of everyone who was there. So, sometime in 81, I think it was, me, Tell and Evie, and it could have been with Rob Taylor, there could have been like 4 of us. We went down to the Roadmenders. And we knew that we were like 13, 14 and there was no way we was getting in this gig. Especially me, because I was tiny. I looked like a girl. And EB looked a bit tougher and Tell was a little bit bigger. So what we did, we sneaked into the Roadmenders early in the day and just started milling around with the hope of staying in there all day and then seeing the gig. So we got into the Roadmenders in the daytime. And the PA was set up, and the guys who were running the PA, they shouted out to us, me, Tell and EB, are you anti-sect? They thought we were the punk band, anti-sect. And we thought it was great. We thought we must be real punks now. They think we're anti-sect. But obviously we weren't. But what happened is, I remember that the anti-sect drum kit was mic'd up on the stage, and their drummer came on. And that was the first time we'd seen a band outside of MK. And it was just brilliant. You know, the sound was absolutely brilliant. So we kind of found a way to get in gigs. Is that we'd go in there in the daytime and just hide, literally hide, until the band came on. So my next memory is, apart from the anti-sect sound check, is seeing Dirt. The band who were on the Crass label, Dirt. Their EP had just come out, Object, Refuse, Reject, Abuse. And I remember seeing Dirt doing their song about Action Man, something dull their record was called. But I don't know if that gig, we snuck into the gig that was Dirt, Annie Anxiety, Flux of Pink Indians and Crass, which was Feb 82 at the Roadmender. I've got a feeling we snuck into it. We saw Dirt and Annie Anxiety, I think. And I think we might have got kicked out. And we got kicked out onto... And the experience we saw of all the punks outside waiting to get it, we'd never really seen anything like it. It was like monumental, you know. And I think we got in the gig. We got back in there somehow. And my only memories are that I know it was rammed front to back. And we got down right at the front, literally at the front. And we was all just getting squashed at the front and that. And I remember afterwards doing a runner. I think we was running away from skinheads, and we did a runner and got to the train station and got home. So, we were safe. So at this kind of time, Tell he changed the way he dressed. He ditched his bondage trousers, ditched his DMs, and he started wearing black army trousers, black combats, his donkey jacket, and just like a t-shirt and a jumper. He got into the crass vegetarian thing and ditched his leather and ditched all the bondage stuff, and that's how he went. By 1982, Screaming the Fits, Ethnic Minority and Fictitious had all split up. So there was like a new band scene at Derwent Youth Club. It's like all the younger lads, like who went to that gig at the King's Head and things like that, were all starting their own bands. There was like Unfinished Business, who practiced at Derwent, which was Scouse, Hodge, Dazzy Pugh and Mole on drums. And you had a band, Ethnic split up, didn't they? So there was Subvert, which was like Dave Norton, Cy Oakley. I think I might have been in the band with you for a while, Alison, singing. So there was a lot of things happening at Derwent, but it was different, because Screaming the Fits, Ethnic and Fictitious, they'd all finished. So we was making our own way through. It was like a new chapter in a lot of ways up Derwent and that. So that's how that went. So around the 82 time, Tell left school in 82. So we started hanging around on the streets more. We'd like go down Bletchley town, all hang outside the co-op. And it was like the saying that I was looking up an album the other day. It's called Let the Tribe Increase, which is by The Mob, which came out in 83. And that's what 82 was like. It was like all these punks coming from all different areas and converging on MK in a way, And I was saying that Tell was he was a gymnast, he was a natural gymnast. And when we started hanging around outside the co-op, he'd do a handstand, so he'd be standing on his hands, then he'd start walking around like outside down the Queensway in Bletchley. He'd just start walking on his hands. And he'd do these tricks where he'd like open a can of beer and he'd be on his hands walking around, and he'd like try to drink the beer while he was a bit of a comedian. Till that was, he was always a bit of a comedian. So I remember that. So at that time, we used to walk up the city centre when they was building the city, like Marlborough Street and all that. It weren't built, and Standing Way weren't built. It was just bulldozed clay. So we used to walk up the city. Me, EB and Tell, and we used to go like to Criminal Records, probably didn't even buy any records because we didn't even have any money. So the later thing is, in 82, we used to go up the co-op first, all meet up, then we'd go up the city, and I think we used to terrorise the security in a way. So during the 82 sort of era, we were still too young to get in the Rose and Castle. We couldn't really get in there. So that's where I say it was like 82, we were on the streets. We were outside drinking for a lot of time, We'd drink down Bletchley town, then we'd all go up the city, and there was just people coming over left, right and centre, new people. And if you wanted to go to a gig, there was hardly any gigs in MK whatsoever. There was, in 82, there was an odd gig at the Compass Club. But that's when we started going to Leighton Buzzard, because it was easy. We just jump on the train, go to Leighton Buzzard, and we got to know quite a lot of the LU7 lot, so. And where I was saying punks were coming from all different areas, like we met a lad called Pete Woods from Stukely. He used to come up and he befriended us all. He was like big mates with Toad. There was a lad called Scruff. He used to come up from London because he was running away from like all the skinheads because he was mixed race. He used to come to London and he used to stay at Mick Lee's house. Because Mick Lee, I think he moved to Bletchley, he was at Denby. I think he come in 81 and he used to crash out at Mick's house. So we all used to get together like that. And during that 82 period, the guy from Stukely, Pete Woods, he had a mate who lived in Cheddington who used to write fanzines, and he was a big Rudimentary Peni fan. I can't remember this guy's name. So where he lived in Cheddington, a few more stops down was Abbots Langley, and that's where Rudimentary Peni was from. So I think that's how this guy who did the fanzines, he knew Rudimentary Peni. Anyway, everyone was saying that this guy had put on a gig at Cheddington Village Hall, a Rudimentary Peni gig. So we all went down there. It was like all Henson, Toad, Fordy, all that year from Denby. Me, Tell, I think it was Mick Lee, load of us went down there, and it was it didn't happen. It was in the winter of '82. We've all got off the train thinking we're going to see Rudimentary Peni. Walked to Cheddington Village Hall, and there was no one there. The place was locked up. There weren't a single car or anything there. And I remember it was like getting dark already. It was like 8 o'clock, and I think I can remember Tell cursing this guy going on about this Rudimentary Peni gig that never happened. And I think on Bletchley Punk Days it was mentioned. I think a lot of people remember, and someone said the guy's name, and I think he was like eternally sorry that he couldn't actually fix Rudimentary Peni to play in Cheddington Hall. So that was like a memorable day that we had. So up the city, there was also it weren't the West Bletchley skinheads, there was also the New City skinheads. There was like a group, and we used to get on all right with them. It was like was it Johnny Lakes and Parrish and them boys. I think Tell and we all used to get on all right with them. You know, we never had any trouble with them at all. And I've just put a note here of some of the bands that we saw in Leighton Buzzard. So it's probably Subhumans, UKDK, Chronic Outbursts, and probably all the other support bands. And we did meet some girls in LU7, and they used to come down outside the co-op. I think one of the girls' names was Jo. I'm not sure if Tell might have sort of had a little girlfriend from Leighton Buzzard. It's in the back of my mind, but nothing serious. I think they just used to meet up on a Saturday, you know, and have a drink up the city and all that. But I remember that. So later in '82, Tell got his first job. When he left school, he started a YTS, and he had a job as a diesel fitter. And when we used to go up Derwent and that, I think Tell, he used to do like a diesel. I think he used to work on the lorries, and he used to keep his combats in his donkey jacket on, and he used to like stink of diesel. It's like, Tell, what's going on, man? But for a while that went on. I don't know how long he did it, but that was definitely 100% his first job was a diesel fitter on a YTS. So going from 82 into 83, Tell had a guitar, and he was playing in a band with Geordie, and they were called Bikini Atoll. They used to practice up Derwent, but no one can remember the full lineup of the band, and they did a gig at Derwent, and no one can remember who they played with. Geordie was telling me he thought it was Exit Stance, but not Exit Stance. He thought it was Ethnic Minority, and I said to him, well, it could have been Exit Stance, or it could be Subvert, the band which was like after Ethnic split, but we don't really know. But during that 83 period, Tell also joined a band with Jake Baker, who was Chris Baker then, who was the singer with Part 1. Part 1 had split up. There was a lad who went to Denby called Brian Matheson. He was in the band, but nobody can remember the fourth member, and nobody can remember the name. So if anybody can come up with that, that would be good. So in 83, going into 84, most of us could get into the pubs by then. So the Rose and Castle became a bit of a punk pub, and there was more people coming into the scene. Like there was Brian and Podge from Newport started going in there, and the I guess for MK 84 really was the Rose and Castle was one of the hangouts, you know, for Milton Keynes. So in 83, 84 time, Toad got his own flat, which was right near Tell's house in Essex Close. So we started hanging around Toad's a lot, and it was like we all came back together again, you know. We sort of fragmented a bit, and we all got back together around Toad's house, and we all got back together playing all our records again. And Tell's music was Epileptics, Flux of Pink Indians, Mob, Zounds, Rudimentary Peni. He was into all that kind of stuff. And obviously we used to go around Toads all day, if we weren't working, and we had a card school around there, and we used to play nap all the time. And in the card school, Mick Lee was in the card school, Bishop was in the card school, John O'Shaughnessy, me, Tell, Toad, and we used to play records all day long, and we just have a right old sing-song. Like Tell would know a lot of the words, sort of like if you stuck Flux on, he used to love Tube Disasters. You stick a Rudimentary Peni record on, he'd know all the words to it. And Bishop, he was into Oi, and Bishop used to bring around his Cock Sparrow records, and we'd never really heard Cock Sparrow, and they were a great sing-along band. So we'd be all there playing nap and that, drinking cups of tea and all that, singing along to Cock Sparrow. Tell just loved to have a sing-song. But with Toad he did have rules, Toad. Like, there was no serious drinking in the house in the daytime or anything like that. And like Bish probably had like some pretty hard Oi records, and Toad wouldn't really allow that either. But he allowed Cock Sparrow. So we all got into Cock Sparrow at the time, which was quite funny. So, yeah, I would say Toad was really good to us lot, like I say, he had rules, but he took us all in, and our punk gang got back together, it was the only base we really had. I think we were still going up Derwent a bit, but it was our only real base was Toad's gaff. So maximum respect to Toad for taking us all in, because he looks after us, So another thing about Tell that a lot of people might not know, during this sort of 84 period, I was right into me motorbikes. And if I had a spare few quid, I'd buy a motorbike. So I could easily have 4 or 5 motorbikes, quite easily. One day, in the daytime, I've gone round Toad's house on a Honda CB200. And the back end of the bike was seized. So I think I got it for like 20 quid or something. But it rode all right. And Tell came out of Toad's house and he said, I want to ride this bike. I really want to ride this bike. I said, Tell, you can't ride a bike. And I said, there's the clutch, there's the gear, 1 down, 4 up, stick a lid on. And outside Toad's flat, there was a car park where all the garages were. I said, see if you can ride it. And he got on it and he just rode off. He started riding it. And was like, oh, where's Tell gone? He's like, oh, he's back on that CB200. Where? And he's come back and he's gone and bought some fags and this, that and the other. And he was out on the bike. And he was saying to me, oh, I really want to ride the bike. Can I ride it? And I said, yeah, So he had a period where he was on my CB200. And I was saying to Tell, you're going to get nicked, mate. When the old girl going to, get older, you're going to get banned and everything. So eventually he gave the bike back and he stopped riding it. But that's a story that a lot of people don't know about Tell. He loved this CB. It kind of changed him for a while. Where he felt the freedom of the motorcycle, and he understood what it was all about. So that was a great experience that I had with Tell. So moving on into 84, Tell and Geordie, they formed a band called Corpse 84. And that band changed their name to Rebel Army. The members of Rebel Army were Geordie on drums, Tell on guitar, Terror Tompkins on bass, Brian Horton also. Originally they had one bassist, then they had Brian as well. So Tompkins and Brian, they used to play together. And Craig Bryce was on vocals. Because Terror Tompkins was a bit like a Captain Sensible. He was like a bit of a comedian on the stage. And I think he used to go off on a tangent sort of thing, Terror. So they needed Brycey on guitar, not Brian Horton on bass as well, just to level things up, so they was a proper band. But there is a demo out there, and you can hear Tell and Geordie. It's raw punk, and I'll put a link on the Facebook Bletchley Punk Days, and it is quite good. So they did a demo at Buckingham Studios. So the history of the band is they did quite a few gigs. They did Stony Volts Bar, they did a C&D rally, they did Dino Day at Pear Tree, and they did the gig at Pear Tree when it was a skinhead invasion. It got into the local paper. The skinheads were all waiting outside or something, and they smashed their way in, and they smashed the place up, and that was the Rebel Army gig at Pear Tree. So there is some paper cuttings and pictures, and I'll stick them up as well. So in 1985, the band split. I think the Buckingham Studios was like a 5-track EP, and they had a gig set up with Cult Maniacs at 100 Club in 85, but the band split, so it didn't happen. So that's how that went. So around 1985, that's when Tell met Julie, the love of his life, at the Rose and Castle. Legend has it that Julie went up to the Rose and Castle with Tracy Miller. Tracy Miller was going out with Stuart Wales at the time, and they met and they got together, and eventually they fell in love. So they were the love of each other's lives. So I think pretty much that Julie became part of Terry's family, you know, and over the years, and over time, I think the accelerator came off the punk pedal a bit, you know, and things slowed down quite a bit, you know. So during the 87-88 period, I still saw Tell at the Hearts, but the punk thing had gone quiet, and even Toad had moved out of town. I went and worked in the south of France in 1988, and when I came back, I still used to see Tell in the Hearts. Tell tragically died on the 8th of January 1989. I walked into the Hearts the following day and found out the terrible news. A lot of Tell's friends were in the pub that night, and I found out that he was taking the shortcut to Julie's flat across the train line, and he got hit by the train. We gave Tell a good send-off and had the wake at the Hearts. I would like to dedicate this podcast to all Tell's loved ones, friends and family. And thanks, Tell, for the amazing journey. I will never forget you.